The Fairer Sex, Short Stories on Male Privilege, Number 25, Mating Calls in Homo Sapiens, submitted to the Department of Tellurian Biology, MGTOW University, Planet Incel, as part dissertation for the degree of Doctor of Philosophy. Declaration and Certificate of Research. This is to certify that neither thesis nor any part of it has been submitted or is concurrently submitted in candidature for any degree at any other university. Signed by PhD candidate. This is to certify that the research described in this thesis is the result of investigation by the candidate under the supervision of the professor. Signed by the professor. The paper commences as follows. Section 1. Synopsis. The males of many animals emit mating calls. These are auditory signals, the purpose of which is to attract the attention of females and, by so doing, convey the reproductive fitness of the males. The females listen, then choose their mate accordingly. We have studied mating calls in Homo sapiens, alternatively earthlings and sometimes humans. These are the commonest primate, which is mostly hairless, bipedal, intelligent and cognitively sophisticated. At present there are slightly more than 8 billion of them. To our surprise, we learn that advertising males are subjected to public shaming or scorn, and sometimes even to punishment by legal fiat. In effect, males must not advertise to females. This censoriousness is counter-instinctual and therefore anomalous. We explain this paradox by positing the evolution of a new subspecies, namely Homo sapiens feministas. Section 2. Introduction. In species that reproduce sexually, which would include all the higher phylogeny, an ovum, that is the gamete that defines the female, is fertilized by a spermatozoon, that is the gamete that defines the male. This is, in effect, a transaction in which the two partners invest in one another. There are, however, as with all investments, associated risks, and these risks are unequally borne. In fact, the female invariably incurs the greater risks, biologically speaking. On planet Earth, this is a universal rule. The nature and magnitude of these risks are of course species dependent, but all share the most fundamental one. The female supply of ova is strictly limited, whereas the male supply of spermatozoa is by comparison effectively limitless. It is as if two partners start a business with the female supplying 99.99999% of the startup capital and the male the remaining 0.00001%. Obviously, this asymmetry has massive implications for mating rituals. It is wholly unsurprising, for instance, that females are far more choosy about males than males are about females. Put differently, males must adopt strategies that get themselves noticed and then get themselves chosen. And to succeed in this quest, they must somehow convey their good genes or reproductive fitness. Advertising strategies are of course legion, but here we shall focus on audible signaling. Amongst insects, males use stridulating organs in which two specially textured body parts are rubbed together. In crickets, for example, the stridulatory organ, located on the forewing, has comb-like serrations on its edge, thus creating a file and scraper. This apparatus is unarguably sexual, since it is absent from the female. Indeed, the courting song, if we may call it that, is used whenever a female draws near. She listens, then decides. Females, indeed, on the basis of this song alone, will select the younger, more fertile males. This is because the older the male, the more worn are the serrations, and consequently the poorer the quality of the song. Amongst amphibians, the mating call is known as croaking. This sound is created by passing air through the larynx, then amplifying it by repeatedly distending and contracting vocal sacs under the throat or in the corner of the mouth. Although females certainly possess comparable apparatus, they emit sounds very rarely, and they never croak as males do. Rather, females just sit and listen to the male chorus. Females prefer croaks of greater intensity and lower frequency, meaning bigger males. Amusingly, males sometimes amplify their calls by sitting within the drain pipes that are part of the earthling's infrastructure. The excited female is presumably disappointed. Amongst birds, males attract females with birdsong. This means a panoply of sounds such as whistles, trills, or even gurgles. In many avian species, only males sing, sometimes only unpaired ones, while females are often unmusical and they just listen. Females prefer males that display larger and more elaborate repertoires, an auditory equivalent of the peacock's tail in effect. As with the peacock, this behavior is entirely explicable if repertoire is a proxy for qualities such as neurology, health, parasite resistance, and foraging ability. In other words, indicative of reproductive fitness. This brings us to Homo sapiens, or earthlings, a primate that diverged from its nearest common ancestor, the chimpanzee, about 5 million Earth years ago. As with other animals, males must get noticed by females. The earthlings have various colloquial terms for mating calls. Wolf whistling is one of them. This is misleading, however. Earthlings are not copying wolves. In the wolf whistle, the male ejects a puff of air from between pursed lips, during which he moves his tongue. This creates a two-note glissando, a peal upwards to a higher note, then a peal downwards to a lower one. The sound is usually of sufficient amplitude to carry for several tens of meters. On a variation of this, a far louder sound is sometimes made by inserting 2 fingers of each hand into the mouth. There is no reason for supposing that females cannot make this sound. The behavior is sexually dimorphic, yes, but not for physiological or neurological reasons. Rather, females seem to have no reason to make this sound. Section 3. Investigation. We observed, covertly of course, in accordance with statutory regulations, the phenomenon of wolf whistling at 2 locations. Site 1, located in London, England, was a construction site on which a substantial apartment block was nearing completion. Although not strictly a mating site or trysting place, we chose it because wolf whistling at such construction sites is routinely singled out for condemnation in the earthling media. The workers at these sites are invariably male, and they wolf whistle at females as they walk by. This behavior is facilitated by scaffolding, which serves as a kind of gantry or observation platform. Site 2, located in Manchester, England, lay in a back street close to the entrance of a nightclub. In these nightclubs, which do serve explicitly as mating sites, males and females jerk and twist their bodies in synchrony to cacophonous, unmusical noises and stroboscopic lights, while consuming large amounts of a disinhibitory drug, chemical formula CH2CH3OH. We observe en passant that after consuming large amounts of CH2CH3OH, males are held accountable for their actions nevertheless, whereas females are not. The reason for this discrepancy is not known. Site 1. Construction site. This site operated only during daylight hours, generally about 9 AM to 6 PM. There was no work on Sundays. The number of workmen could not be ascertained precisely, but varied from day to day, from about 15 to 25. These workers are readily identified by their bright yellow upper garments and the hard carapace or helmet with which they protect their heads. This form of dress does not, however, exclusively demarcate skilled manual workers, as managers and architects also use them. The wolf whistling we witnessed, though, was explicitly practiced by skilled manual workers. There is no reason to suppose that managers and architects lack the neurophysiological apparatus to wolf whistle. Rather, they chose not to do so. This difference between occupational classes remains unexplained. During the course of 1 month, we observed a total of 33 instances of wolf whistling. The targeted females were young, slim, with an attractive face, and of childbearing age. 6 responded in a manner that was short and somewhat pithy. For example, "Get lost," "Piss off," and "No chance, mate." On one occasion, a middle-aged female, possibly still of childbearing age, turned round and laughed while wagging her finger at the wolf-whistling male. The male then said, "Have a good day, love," at which the female turned back and continued her journey with a lingering smile. In all other instances, the females ignored the wolf whistle, although we cannot rule out the possibility that it was not heard, as construction sites are noisy places. For scientific rigour, we must also consider instances in which passing females were not wolf whistled. We observed many instances of this. They were middle-aged, elderly, or overweight. On these occasions the men continued about their duties as if the passing females were invisible. Another female not wolf whistled was most certainly of childbearing age, but, unlike the others, she had adopted an exotic appearance. Her hair was dyed with blue streaks, her face was tattooed, and her nasal septum contained a metallic ring. She was also substantially overweight. After passing the construction site, and observing that the men were oblivious to her presence, she returned and berated them for wolf whistling at the passing women. "Women are not bodies on display," she shouted. "Wolf whistling is a hate crime. Misogynists, phallus fascists." The men looked at one another with incredulity and remained silent, although one of them was heard to say, "'Struth, not tonight, love." Site 2. A nightclub. We observed the entrance to the nightclub between the hours of 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. on a Friday and a Saturday night. At these events, we have come to suspect that females compete with one another in minimizing the area of fabric that covers their bodies. In many instances, for example, the ostensible dress has numerous cutouts, especially in the vicinity of the breast. The fabric clings to the female body like a second skin around the breasts and the buttocks, disguising very little. The midriff is exposed, as are the legs, almost as far as the pudenda. The fabric, moreover, is of such astonishing elasticity that, when taken off, it reduces to the size of an earthling's handkerchief. Since the females dress themselves thus, no matter how cold the weather, and voluntarily so, then this behaviour is probably instinctive. In total, we observed 3 instances of wolf whistling. In the first, 3 males were walking along one side of the street, 4 females along the other side. When one of the males emitted his mating call, all of the females laughed. One of them shouted, "You wish." Another shouted, "Small dick." As an aside, we observe that when females wish to demean a male, their first resort is to claim that his sex organ is diminutive. The males then laughed, while the advertising one clasped his chest as if struck by an arrow, and shouted, "You're breaking my heart." Both groups, nevertheless, approached the entrance to the nightclub and mingled eagerly as they did so. One of the males put his arm around one of the females, and without objection. In the second instance of wolf whistling, an automobile of exceptional value entered the street and drew alongside the entrance to the nightclub. For reasons we shall come to presently, we estimated the value of this automobile. It was around 14 times an average salary. The window on the driver's side was lowered, a wolf whistle was discharged from the car, and a group of females, noticeably excited, approached and began conversing with the driver. The females then jostled and pushed one another, each seeking an opportunity to speak to the driver. In the third instance of wolf whistling, when a single wolf whistle came from a group of 7 males, 4 police females leaped from a van and surrounded the advertising male. We provide here a transcript of the conversation that then ensued. Police female 1. We observed you wolf whistle at those women. Male. It was him over there. Police female 3. Don't play ignorant, we have you on CCTV. Police female 2. Wolf whistling means that you hate women. Male. What are you talking about? I love women. Police female 1. Women shouldn't have to put up with that. Male. Put up with what? Police female 4. Unwanted attention. Unwanted attention is a hate crime. Police female 1. It's misogyny, street harassment, pure and simple. Police female 2. It's not harmless, it's not a joke, it's not a compliment. Police female 3. Put your hands behind your back. Male. What offence have I committed? Police female 1. Misogyny, contrary to section 341 of the Violence Against Women and Girls Act. Making a sexual advance to a woman without having the clairvoyant powers to know that she wants you to make a sexual advance. Section 4. Discussion. Instinctive behavior by definition requires no deliberation, calculation, or awareness at any conscious level. Dogs, for example, never think in the manner of an earthling. I'll turn round a few times before lying down. Earthlings possess high-level executive functioning, and they are proud, sometimes overly so, of their skills in logic, reasoning, and ratiocination. They will, nevertheless, behave instinctively on occasion, without any conscious awareness of those instincts, what those instincts are for, or why those instincts even exist. Sexual behavior is driven by sexual instincts, and sexual instincts are programmed by sexual selection. In their ancestral environment, earthlings that behaved a certain way found a mate and left progeny, while those behaving in other ways failed to find a mate or left no progeny. Present-day earthlings are descended from their successful forebears, not their unsuccessful ones. To form a pair bond, males and females must first find one another, and mating strategies will evolve to do so. Successful ones will be selected for. Unsuccessful ones will disappear. Female responses to wolf whistles. When females were wolf whistled, 2 typical replies were, "No chance, mate," and "You wish." These replies, which we classify as flat rejection and sarcastic rejection, respectively, reveal that the females understood the motivation for the wolf whistle, an attempt to instigate social interaction, which, if successful, would culminate in sexual congress. On one occasion, we observed several females simultaneously accept a wolf whistle, then begin fighting amongst themselves over the male. We refer to the incident with the expensive automobile. Such behavior is readily explicable, that is, the male's provisioning role in the pair bond, for females prefer males with greater resources. In the ancestral environment, females who prioritized the provisioning ability of the male left more progeny. In this connection, we would expect manual workers, who are remunerated at lower rates and readily identified by their bright yellow jackets, to experience greater rates of rejection, although more research would be required to conform this. Females who are wolf-whistled. Not all females were wolf-whistled. The age of the female is an important criterion. Elderly females were ignored. Those in early adulthood were most likely to be wolf-whistled. This is entirely consistent with the fertility of the female, which peaks between the late teens and late 20s. But since we lack means of determining age with any precision, our evidence must remain qualitative at this stage. In one instance, a woman of middle age was wolf-whistled, at which she laughed and wagged her finger at the advertising male. Mock censoring, in other words. We advance two hypotheses here. A. Attitudes to wolf-whistling have changed over the years, and older women reached adulthood in a different milieu. B. The female was flattered to be perceived as still fertile, even if insincerely so. Indeed, the male have even behaved jocularly. With this second hypothesis, it should be recognized that females make far more effort than males to disguise their advancing age. This is consistent with the fact that female fertility declines rapidly after age 40, but males remain fertile for far longer. The second criterion is undoubtedly the waist-to-hip ratio of the female. Fortunately, the importance of waist-to-hip ratio to fertility has already been extensively researched. Peak fertility falls within the range of 0.68 to 0.72. In fact, if females fall within this range, they can be a few years older and yet more fertile than younger ones. We were less able to ascertain waist-to-hip ratio on the construction site, as females were more fully clad. In the vicinity of the nightclub, however, where females were barely clothed, we obtained some good data. The likelihood of a female being wolf-whistled was highly correlated with waist-to-hip ratio. If females exceed a ratio of 0.72 through overfeeding, they are far less likely to be wolf-whistled. Obese females were never wolf-whistled. Viewed in this light, it is difficult to see wolf-whistling as anything other than a harmless auditory signal that females are free to accept or reject, for it is uncoercive. This is sexual instinct in males as well as females. It seems to work much as expected. 2 earthling generations ago, wolf-whistling was regularly depicted in celluloid as harmless, light-hearted and amusing. The actresses typically subjected to wolf-whistling were notable for their sex appeal. They were known as screen goddesses. This was of course drama and not real life, but were these scenes genuine depictions of public attitudes? We cannot yet answer this question unequivocally. We suspect, however, that public attitudes have inverted in the intervening decades. The following article recently appeared in a newspaper, The Guardian. The Far-Right Wolf at the Door, by Laurie Bates. Wolf-whistling is a common form of far-right street harassment in which a far-right predatory man treats a woman as a sex object. This practice is further evidence of how much power far-right men have over us in a world where women are routinely commodified. We should not delude ourselves that this is flattery. It has nothing to do with sexual interaction. Its goal is to demonstrate the power that far-right men have over women, to intimidate women and to frighten women. It is a violation of women's rights and is proof of deep-rooted gender inequality. Far-right gender inequality, that is, and far-right male privilege, and far-right toxic masculinity. Far-right, far-right, far-right. End of article. If wolf-whistling was regarded as inoffensive in the past, then why is it regarded as offensive today? We believe the instinctive function of wolf-whistling is now being misconstrued. The purpose is not to objectify the female. Rather, the male is simply saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm over here." When this is recognized, another intriguing question arises. When females dress themselves such that their clothing comes to resemble a second skin, and this manner of adornment is not being forced on them, their bodily contours, buttocks, waist, breasts, are put on public display, thus sending a visual signal of make-worthiness to the males. We must ask, then, why females may send visual signals to males, but males may not send auditory signals to females. If an auditory signal constitutes harassment, then why not a visual one? As hinted earlier, earthlings sometimes overestimate their logical reasoning. The wolf whistle expresses admiration of the female's appearance, but only in so far as the male considers the female mate-worthy. If females prefer not to be considered mate-worthy, then why do they spend so much of their time, money, and effort making themselves appear mate-worthy? Earthling societies display great zeal in condemning and eradicating what they refer to as sexism. From extensive studies that we shall present elsewhere, we are now in a position to define what earthlings mean by sexism. It means treating females disadvantageously relative to males. But we can find little evidence of such treatment, at least in Western civilization. Instead, we find extensive evidence that males are disadvantageously treated relative to females, although we would admit this does not strangely fall under the earthling's definition of sexism. We are driven to suspect that, since there is not enough sexism to supply the demand for it, then it must be concocted. In this respect, we now posit the emergence of a subspecies, Homo sapiens feministus, which, although it can still interbreed with Homo sapiens, is sufficiently different to justify a distinct taxonomy of its own. This investigation furnished our first clue of its existence. Homo sapiens feministus is characterized by unnatural hair colors, such as blue or orange, metallic rings through nasal septa, unattractive or even ugly faces, and waist-to-hip ratios that betray extensive overfeeding. These are the morphological differences, to which we add cognitive problems such as difficulties with reasoning logically, imperviousness to facts, and a tendency to shout the future is female. Above all, Homo sapiens feministus invents fake sexism, the motivation of which is to persecute and scapegoat males. Section 5. Conclusion. 1. We remain confident in our thesis that wolf whistling lies on the same courtship spectrum as singing in birds, croaking in frogs, and stridulation in insects. 2. Earthling males wolf whistle earthling males to attract their attention. The earthling females are then free to accept or reject the earthling male. 3. In numerous ways, earthling males and earthling females behave in ways that are entirely consistent with sexual selection. 4. Censoriousness toward wolf whistling is driven by a subspecies, Homo sapiens feministus. This subspecies manufactures fake sexism in order to shame and scapegoat and persecute earthling males. The end. If you like this story, please consider subscribing, liking the video, or leaving a comment, as this will help to grow my channel. Thank you.